I'm here today with Kaya Willis. Kaya is, well, she self-describes as former woke and former anti-Israeli or anti-Zionist, and she has put out a lot of takes that I would really love to dig into. You spoke, Kaya, about some sort of anti-Israeli or anti-Jewish, but please correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, indoctrination, essentially.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for having me on your channel. But yeah, so I guess Israel wasn't as big of a topic back when I was in university, and that was when I was kind of indoctrinated into the anti-Israel ideology. Um, so that was probably a good thing for me, was that it wasn't such a big deal. So I wasn't, there's no videos of me going and tearing down college campuses or burning the American flag like you're seeing today. But if it had happened, like what's happening today had happened when I was in university, I would have been one of those people who was out um, protesting for Palestine and being anti-Israel. And it was pretty much what I was told was that Israel was an apartheid state, what you hear being repeated all over social media, and that because I am Black and I'm supposed to be against apartheid, what happened in South Africa, I should be anti-Israel. And so I just really kind of blindly accepted it at the time. My entire worldview and mentality of how I looked at politics was that there were certain ideas that I was supposed to hold because of my race. And so that was why I kind of accepted this anti-Israel position so blindly. And so, yeah, I think back then I definitely would have just blindly followed whatever my peers were doing, even if that had meant, doing some of the crazy stuff that we're seeing American university students doing today.
Okay, so I have several questions about that. First of all, isn't that kind of racist? Like maybe for someone who's not an American, that seems automatically seems racist, but maybe to you it doesn't. So, how first could you address that? It seems
Yeah, it
racist.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely it is yeah, to believe that, being a certain race or having a certain skin color is supposed to determine what you believe, and especially is supposed to determine that you're supposed to dislike other groups to a certain extent. Yeah, it's absolutely racist. Um, but I guess with American culture right now, or at least the culture that's predominant in universities, what they call here identity politics, which is the idea that you belong to this group. Usually it's about race, but it can be other things as well. The fact that you're a woman or the fact that you are gay or certain characteristics is supposed to determine all of your political views and kind of how you see the world. Uh, no matter what you experience or no matter what individual aspects or qualities that you have as a person. It's a really big issue here where people are kind of told that these, yeah, just unchosen things about yourself are supposed to determine how you think and the kind of political views that you have or the kind of movements that you follow. But that is right now kind of the norm on, and at least, yeah, especially with the college campuses and things.
Could you tell me what you mean when you say indoctrinated? Like when you say you were indoctrinated to this and that. What does it mean, indoctrinated? What do you really mean?
Indoctrinated, yeah. So I guess this idea that being Black is supposed to determine all of my ideas and everything that I do. It's something that I was taught from a really young age. So I was never really introduced to any other ways of maybe this is wrong, maybe this is, like you said, racist. From a really young age, what I was told is that this is the right thing to do, the right way to be. This is just how you be a good person, is that you kind of follow your group. And so it was really hammered into me starting really young when I was, yeah, way before I was in university, this idea. And then as I got older, through mostly through school, um, this idea was just hammered into me even more up until or up through when I went to university when my professors were saying these things and we had to go through sort of our training to get even to start going to university involved us being told that this is how we're supposed to view the world.
Could you give me an
So it's
example? Like, how does it, what do you mean your training involves having to have this view? How does it work?
Yes. So in the US, we have these programs, they're called DEI programs. They stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what these programs tell you that they're supposed to do is that they're supposed to make schools or workplaces a welcoming environment for everyone. That's what they claim to do. And so what you do with these programs is you go through these trainings where you are told how to think and how to behave in order to make certain groups feel more welcome, supposedly. Um, but typically, how they actually end up working out is that you go through these trainings where they teach you that because of your race, there are certain things that you can or can't say, or certain things that you can and can't believe. And if you break or cross that line and decide to say something or act in a certain way that is not in accordance with their guidelines, then you are going to be creating an environment that's not inclusive for other people. So there's a list of things that you are allowed and aren't allowed to say, or allowed and aren't allowed to do. And yes, and it kind of can depend on your race. So certain races are allowed to say certain things, certain races aren't. And it's very silly and kind of crazy, and I don't know how exactly to explain it
Well,
to
when you put it this way, it
an
does.
international audience.
No, yeah, I do know. I actually didn't mean to take this conversation into DEI, but I guess I guess it kind of popped in. So what I'm going to try is
Yeah.
ask you, how does DEI relate to being? Well, I've seen you describe yourself as a former non-binary, right? Former anti-Zionist and former non-binary. Like, how does DEI relate to all that?
Yes. So the way that, as I said, there are certain, when you're in DEI training, there are certain things that you are allowed to say, not allowed to say, and it's determined by your race. What DEI kind of teaches is that there is a hierarchy of races or a hierarchy of characteristics. There are certain characteristics that are allowed to say certain things and certain characteristics that aren't. So, for example, with like the racial hierarchy is that white people are not allowed to offend Black people or um, white people, Asian people, Jewish people are considered to be more, they're considered oppressors according to kind of the DEI mindset. So if you're an oppressor, you're not allowed to say things that could offend somebody who is oppressed. And
But do they use these terms? Because I know that people who criticize these things, and I'm amongst them, we
mhm.
use the term. Well, we make the strawman saying these people only view the world through the lens of oppressor and oppressed, right? That's like the talking point. But do they actually use this terminology? I mean, you were there, so you probably know. Do they actually use the terminology explaining to you, well, look, these guys are oppressors, these guys are oppressed?
Yeah, that's pretty common. Or they'll use yeah, so it'll either oppressor or oppressed, or sometimes they'll use the terms like privileged and underprivileged and oppressed, also oppressor, oppressed, um, marginalized versus majority. There's a few different ways, but it's really ends up being the same concept,
Yeah.
which is these people who are considered oppressors, the things that they do are going to harm you, and the things that they say are going to harm you. And if you're in an oppressed category, then you are being harmed by the
What
things
year
that
is
the
this, by
oppressors
the
would
way?
say.
What year is your indoctrination taking place? Just so we have the time schedule in mind.
Yeah, so I guess the beginning of the oppressor oppressed hierarchy was when I was indoctrinated into that was when I was very, very young, like elementary school. And that was coming from my community and a little bit of school, but mostly just the community that I was raised in.